다 상으로야 안에 나루들이 섬시하라 안들이 대배배 아주다 지 군주 아바수레 다는 신기 지 긴둥이데 저주인 아바수레 다는 시대 좀 게다 초고용이야 안들이데 캐나다리아 토마 용하기 고급총 안디나네 미세기 지도대배 통계 리나로야다 들이데 뭐였어지 마지 만조리아 public talk chair 들이 고급총벌에 디 고급들 균지 강조 제아당 아주 빈주지리아 interaction somewhere 제아 고급총벌에 가우시라 좀 안에 정으로야 섬주샤이
Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to be here. I would like to extend my warmest greetings to all of our guests who are gathered here, as well as all of the monks and nuns who are comprising the monastic Sangha gathered here, and to all other friends gathered here. Welcome to everyone. It is wonderful that this opportunity for my first visit to Canada has come to pass, and in particular for that first visit to begin in the beautiful city of Toronto. Furthermore, to have this opportunity to share some thoughts in the context of a public talk in this city is very fortunate circumstance. And so I would like to express my delight and gratitude to you all.
고대
Do.
다 어디서 디아 카고시 대 어디 댕에서 고에 메가시 고대
Is everyone hearing His Holiness well enough?
오케이 나라 야부시라고 보면 지금 우려를 시키게 야부시
Lasa.
다 제발면 돼
Lasa.
다들 이제 가져라다 안들이 아주 자기 최저 규미 하는 공기 가져라다지 매시 최저 규미 공기 뭐마디 최저 나로리아 지 회배고래 기시에지 예 유튜브나 통송
Lasa.
제가 드리는데 무슨 제가 가보시라죠.
Lasa.
아니 드리는 미세 공례 도시 슈아이.
Lasa. We heard from the Honorable Member of Parliament moments ago, and it happens to be the case that I saw him give a speech in the House of Commons about the Tibetan cause and about Tibet. And I was very appreciative of this, and so I'm delighted to have the opportunity to especially thank him for his efforts here today.
다들인데 가져라 다 지단기 지 토론토 서머베다 디 총게니 나로레야 지 미리 점링기 지 미리 담이데마 나소지 좀사 인제 총게를 차리야래 아니 미리 디게 지 수수기 지 최다 리숑 等这个value 如卡的人堂如，是当看这有边边呀，这里呀就我给买不是那这样多，这个来就让我吃上，有点吧，这里呀就这里呀，自古的苦古托古吧，但这里这个重给一些吃的呀，那把多，就pyurigi changbor hajang mabuji ta zodi Canada nanglo ne mangchi shuji ta zoran zoli ya du syore chezang digi dile ya ji zoran zogi ji lungbu dang dang ne singi ta ji people of Toronto somorbe di changme gi ene be ji gosu ji be warm welcome to nangse na da da bodong azu ji bebe gi pyuri zue ji cho ji ne ji su su chue de ri shung sung gyup cha cho ji ne ji rang su su gi ji min si gi da ji chwa tab so mar we de gi di ji gar shue kan ji to le mi ne a ji shira ga da ya wu yo de bi du si mi de ri go de dun xie ane delia misegi gadin je den dang an tu chi shuai
Toronto is a very exceptional city with regard to its rich diversity and the way it embraces and celebrates the presence and cultures of so many different peoples from all around the world. Toronto is a city that appreciates the value of having the presence of people from various backgrounds and having them protect their own unique spiritual and cultural traditions. Toronto is a city that sees the value in that, where all of these people from these different backgrounds can engage in their own spiritual and cultural traditions without any restrictions and with full freedom to do so. Not only freedom to do so, but in an environment where their unique backgrounds are respected. From among that setting, there is an especially wonderful environment here for Tibetan people. Toronto, as we know, holds the greatest concentration of Tibetan people in all of Canada. And so the environment of Toronto represents a wonderful opportunity for Tibetan people to feel welcome, and they have indeed been warmly welcomed here, to continue protecting their unique spiritual and cultural traditions, and beyond that, to simply lead a life of well-being. And so, in so many regards, from so many different perspectives, the city of Toronto has been a wonderful home for many Tibetan people. And I'd like to take the opportunity that today affords me to express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to all of the people of Toronto.
다 디린디 고주야디 더기 디스 치워를 차진다 죽주야 두수를 내 자임자 디린 유산에 다 마시 디린 니마 당부 인자 니마 당부 디나 세션 당부 디 인자 다 디즈지 잔직 머지를 지 연구되어 가래 다 지당기 가르쳐라다 다들 이제 지 조지 남배기 가르쳐다 지금 최단 제배团에 이제 다 가서 지금 현재 현재 재산한 장도 야나다지 최시를 차 드리머에 디의 죄제를 조 파제지 실험 제숨 사르지 디지 실험 제숨 걸지 시아람데
Larry? Russell? Today we got started a little bit later than scheduled, but nevertheless, it's just the first session of our program. And I was asked to speak about a specifically Buddhist topic. So the topic of our presentation today will be ground, path, and fruition.
디 죄세디 가주에 다나 쇼베마 디 죄세디 실험 제수님의 하고가서
Lasso?
하시에서 로종 시야르스 하시에서 양 때문에 이be 시야르스 제가 실험 제수님이 이베디 다나 쇼베마 시야마서 안들이 유산다 지 가주가 실험 제수는 남샤 사데다지 가주다지 베나스 아주 남규지 나셔 기베 가서 지나다 나셔 딘 사부시다요래 다 예민해다 디디지 그 뒤비네지 실험 제수의 남샤 티나라야 두주예위 인두산에 다고 디 실험 제수 사데 동지 첨부르지 디지차리 예위 인두산에 다디 남상 저지 강한 매ብ지리아 셰트야데 가라카브르샤서
Lasso? And as it happens, as things sometimes do, I just found out this morning that the specific topic for the program today is ground, path, and fruition. I was told at some points that the topic was to be lojong, or mind training, and at other times I was told that the topic would be something else. But in the end, it was determined that the topic was to be ground, path, and fruition. And I only mention this because ground, path, and fruition is a very vast rubric of Buddhist studies and practice. So it encompasses a great deal of content from the Buddhist teachings that is vast and profound. It is one of these kind of category schemes from the Buddhist teachings that really encompasses everything, the entire Buddhist journey and all of the teachings that pertain to it. And so since it is such a vast topic, I think it's going to be a little bit challenging for me to speak eloquently about it with such little time to prepare.
다들인데 아직 실험 제좀 사게 지 시사 남주 신고의 내루스를 사네 다 조조디 지 가주라다지 뭐의 내단서는 장도 지 뭐의 내주 내루 가리버디 지 오저샤서는 장도 다들이지 수십치 아이버래
So the first of this triad, ground, path, and fruition, is the ground. And what ground means, in a very basic sense, is the actual state of things. We could say the true nature of things, or the way things truly abide. The basic condition or actual status of all phenomena. And so the teachings about ground point out to us or introduce us to this reality.
다지당 뭐의 내로아 코랑기 가수에지 일루로 다른 예배데 아주 의변이로 치신 통내자 마통내자 의변이로 텔레야 그 개발스게 두요 말해 이내야다지 의변이로 치신 마통나 다 마통게 당 안한소 지 가수에다지 안한소리야다 교회를 시원디가 의변이로 치신 마통니 에너지 가수지 지시 마통디 에너지 디제다지 다 강에 먹고 쳐야 또 차디요래 다들이 이제 의변이로 지신 통을 채블이야 근데 개치 쉬어디 아주지 니로 가려 버텔래야지 아주 따당만 넣었어야 다도 다 viewpoint 다디 지금 만어로와 양다와 진지지과 개좀 차리 따당만 넣어 중의미나 아니 신의 지금 의변이주 컨트리 버디 통투야지 용거래 삼정도
The true nature of things, the way things really are, the actual status of reality, is something that is actually present and does not change, regardless of whether we see it or not. So regardless of whether we actually realize what true reality is or see directly what true reality is, the reality itself does not change. Nevertheless, if we fail to see reality as it is, then we encounter all kinds of difficulties, problems, and hardships. Therefore, in order for us to see reality as it is, to see the true nature of reality, we have to work on developing a correct viewpoint or a correct way of looking at things. And if we can work on developing a correct way of looking at things, then we are in good standing to come to a point where we can actually see true reality as it is.
대단한 남규 남배기 다지 뜨름 나로래야지 따와 사야되다 계속 지어야 지금 동이 따와 지금 남의 따와 이게 계속 지어야 다디 아주 여기 조지 뭐변이 주 가리인 버텔래야지 떠주는 제당 수수에게 다시 viewpoint somewhere 다시 내주제 삼 제가 도스
Dogmatic.
viewpoint
Lasso.
따당으로지
Lasso. Dogmatic. Tatang race.
oh no it's like all this we are talking about all this view
La re.
it's more it's talking about like viewpoint
Lasso.
how we look the sort of reality
Lasso. In Buddhist philosophy, it is taught that developing a correct view is very important. So this word, view, is something that comes into play a lot and is considered a very important component of learning. So when the Buddhist teachings talk about view, the teachings often discuss the principles of emptiness and selflessness. And these principles or realities of emptiness and selflessness are considered to be very important components of developing correct view. But in terms of the true nature of reality, this is all about developing a way of looking at the world, a viewpoint from which we can see what is going on in an unerring way.
다 답되어 쉐윙나 나중에 지기 가주에 나사들이야 더주 컨디션 진단으로 컨디션 팅아주 봐 딱지 쉐윙이나 딱 나사게 진단 더주도디 다지 나사듯이 지 라왕와서네 다도 야나 independent somewhere that did ji ngarobi yuedebrji tende yara dai na ngui ni ju thwale ya tindi ji gi de independent somewhere xian la ma de ba ane ji tinde ge nga be rong su tu ba ji yara be sla bi na de yo ma ba na nga ju ji nga su zu zu sa 다 현다지 공부하시다 삼로마담비 능에는 지 수기 공부 som으로 안주 지 류부들 삼담비미냐 류부디 지 가수다 지 파말레 데니 총대바 데니 지 현라라 류대바 수부의 주야대 현라라 류대바지 다나신 안주지 지 사회세 견배 그 가르임비네 아직 시안라 라 류데버지 시안라 땡데버지 드림브레
If we were to speak about the reality of selflessness in a very simple way, then we can take a look at our ordinary conception of ourselves, our ordinary everyday thoughts of I and me. And we can look at the question, what is it we think we are identifying when we have that thought, I or me? What does the mind that thinks that thought actually look at or perceive? Or think or believe? If we look into the matter, I think we'll see that the way we assume ourselves to be, this I or me, is that we think that it is independent. We think that this I or me, we think that ourselves are basically an independent entity that does not depend upon other things to exist. But if we look more deeply into that assumption, we will see that we ourselves are actually not independent, that we need to depend upon many other people and things to exist. So we don't exist independently, and this I or me that we have really can't stand its own ground all alone. There's no phenomenon that we can point our finger at and identify it as an independent entity. So often when we think of ourselves, of course, one of the first reference points that comes to our minds is our body. So we can look at our body as a basis for our thought of ourselves. Our body is something that arose in dependence upon our parents. The very existence of our body depends upon other things. The food we need to eat to nourish our body, the clothing we need to wear to protect our body, all of this depends upon others.
Teni Nuzan Jik Pan Dangmes or that the Egyptolia selflessness the Luzane that sick the shook chamberus. Da Yomare said sick the Shirag that shook chamberus Shadiar. Jeza Mima which is sounded on Dasa, the Zawan and Mavericks. Direct calling or the immediate so delay emphasize Chadi Gajue Zo the answer is Samba Nashiji. The Rigida Gajue Daji, Yeme Dagores. The Yusan de Dames are Zo the Azu Samba Nashiji Daji Yomaris. The Yusane, we need to tolia Dasa the Kandichi Trudo. Gaju Pinju Jigli Jigdu Tony. Kandichi Dasa Jig. Rang to Jong Imbachen. Jig Dinjung Dudu, the Jig Tone, Dasa Kandisto. The Jiggy wandering summer, the Jig Dark under Jimilia Jig. I wrote that Tizum gave us an antondo, Yana wandering to Yuan shadow and get a shoot chamberchi. Sublishness that the shoot chamberchi, showing get something.
Lassa? Wandering.
Yeah, makes people wondering.
Lassa?
Maybe.
Lassa? Inang tendakto di race.
Maybe.
Lassa?
We'll see.
Okay. His Holiness will assess the quality of my translation. There can be some misunderstandings of this dimension of reality, partially because of this very imposing sounding word, selflessness, or no self. It sounds very powerful and very serious, and some people can misunderstand what it means just because of the seriousness of the term. Some people hear the word selflessness or no self and they think that, oh, this means the Buddhists are saying that there is no self whatsoever. There's no such entity of an I or a me whatsoever. But that's not quite the meaning of selflessness. The teachings on selflessness, rather, encourage us to explore what our self really is, to further explore the ways in which the self exists and the ways in which the self does not exist. So one of our main habits in relation to the self is that we tend to assume that we ourselves are independent and have no dependence upon other things. But the teachings on selflessness point out to us that the basic reality of the self is that it is in fact completely dependent upon other things continuously. That we ourselves operate in a reality of mutual dependence and interconnectedness, dependent arising in relationship to a vast array of other phenomena. So some people may indeed wonder what the meaning of these Buddhist teachings on selflessness is all about and have some doubt about that. So it's important for us to have a clear understanding.
Today in Yusan, selflessness is full stop somewhere that's
Lassa?
It's more like question mark somewhere.
Lassa?
The Kashil Da Yomar Lajuta, Da Kashil Taran Liaji, Samadon Chamber Cheche, Da Yomaris, and Sangi Dam Yomaris, Da Yomaris, some sort of something about the deal, only to further explosion somewhere. That's it. Only the Meta Miluji. We need to talk country in Ba. The Simship chair with the Jiggy, Tona Gear, which is the Troy Gear, which I own. Only Chanadame Sadi, talk to you so. Da Yomar, Nemaji, Sangi, Chumbian and Jinsi, 타 제베 소리시 딘데 메이바 다 얘네 아직 다 매베지 미루세난 장도 다 매베서 된다 가리마 뒤로 고야 가리마 매버레스 제제 레라버지 셰샤 메이바 다 되지 오늘 저녁에 다디 된다 고아로디 띵사부 가리마 디 고알령 거야데 계속 시다는 상정도
That's it.
당기 주변의 신 아주 삼번의 신지 아주 능기 나사디 진다 섬주 그러지비다 되는 신지 도담도
That's it.
대양 아주기 지 alien 지 초화담배 alien 섬으로 초화다 카르 마찬가지 우연히 주기 아주 미지기 초화다 제외团 삼도한테 계속 시다는 삼정本당기 아주 주변의 신 지 나사디 지 셴라 류데비지 랑소 초화다人이 지 다도고 랑그 도고 담섬 창물로 지 셴라 류데비임지 되지 삼로지 코르트비미나 안신내지 아주 초왕어의 제외团에 삼로도 하지 용도 봐 Maybe you should drink some water. No?
Oh. I don't mind if I do, Your Holiness.
Maybe you should have glasses. No, that's okay.
So, selflessness should not be understood as a full stop or as a period that just ends the sentence, that ends all further discussion and ends all further exploration. Instead, we should regard selflessness as more like a question mark. Some people, when they contemplate selflessness, they relate to the topic as if it were a decision that has already been made for them. They say, well, there is no self, and that's that. But that's not really the correct way to approach the study and contemplation of selflessness. We need further exploration, and we need an attitude of inquisitiveness. If the Buddha taught that the self in some way does not exist, then we need to learn what did he mean by that. What is the specific way that the self actually does not exist? What is the specific way in which the self operates in terms of true reality? And it's actually possible for us to approach this inquisitive process with a sense of delight and curiosity. Selflessness isn't just like a commandment that was given by the Buddha that we need to follow. It's rather a teaching by the Buddha that we're meant to explore for ourselves and develop our own clear understanding of, based on our own personal experience. If we can explore selflessness in this way, and the Buddha's teachings on selflessness in connection with our own direct personal experience, then we will be able to develop an understanding that is truly profound. So as I mentioned before, it's not that the Buddha said that the self is utterly non-existent. I think the meaning of the Buddha's teachings is more that the self doesn't exist in the way that we thought it did, in the way that we assumed it did. So we start off by examining our usual assumptions and our ordinary conceptions of the self, and then we look further to see, is there a self that's really there or not that matches those assumptions and thoughts? And again, this process of exploration should not be alienated from our day-to-day experience, but rather it should be connected with our day-to-day experience. We can look at our own day-to-day lives and see how we ourselves are dependent upon others in order to exist. All of the food and clothing and so forth, everything that we need to maintain an identity of ourselves comes from and depends upon others. If we can reflect in an ongoing way like that, then I think we will develop a true experiential understanding.
제가 지금 담에 사디 상계 아무 집에 타제산 소수체에 타제산 안 다당 아주 지금 제도 첸다 담에 제도 체사는 되게 없지. 근데 통고 알아되네. 뭐서다 다 이민사다 타디 지 상계 아주 첩체네 타제 투야지 매다. 소의 소수기 지 가르줘야 지 다신见接不钱 아니 지 타체위나 대원에 전에 타체버지 차디 와래 대원에 전에 지 가르줘야 다음에 통화선한테 다음에 뭐 가르줘야 지 소소를 편도 연예지 차도 무슨 정도
So some people may approach studies and contemplations of selflessness as if it were a series of conclusions to repeat after the Buddha. But actually, the Buddha cannot take our own place. The Buddha cannot stand in for ourselves when it comes to investigating what our reality is. It is up to ourselves to do our own investigations, explorations, and analyses. And when we do that, then we'll be really able to become decisive. Then the teachings on selflessness will have brought us some actual benefit.
그래. 그게 제일 하던 이제 제일 제사자. 주도. 그래. 남기 예산이다. 미 따지 담는데 너무 용거하래. 망부지기 답에 나래야 배지 가수지 시럽 남주 시럽이라 민도스. 그리고 지금 시럽 개배지 시럽 첨부 영화지기 배 시럽로 나로지. 하나지 시럽에 고원으로 채시. 저 고조 삼례 나로를 지금 내버도 봐지 칸을 채시. 시럽 첨부 지 자유 여반으로 지 근데 지 삼로 고유서 지 시럽 개배 고체로지. 근데 신인데 용디도 다 남상 아 고체 영화스 개민도 다 시럽사디 남균에 나랑 냠뇨를 체인 주스다네 다지 시럽 다바도 당 아주 시럽사디 마신데 지 시럽사디 고 놀 가르다 드신담도 자요 कुरान ये आवा मंगो और ताइने कम दिले आजी निरु तो अबे शिरब से ना डांडो याना जो नामसांगे विषय दिया कि जी से थोबे जी शिरब दिंदे जी योमर छाबले या कैसे शुदी जी तावा तगी शेबन सिंग 아주 다음 주에 좀 세대야 난기 다음만 넣어지 수수규리 개비체 근데 그 동안에 간다지 수수기 지 삼바디 배 가서다 지 야셔 당선한다 엄마지 부수 도벌 수요 되버디 그저 로제 깨시 근데 그 동안에 아니지 배 따당 만자를 준비입니다 오늘 보려 따당 엄마 나로서 말 부수 도벌 되래 야셔 버지 따당 만자 준비이나 아니 신이지 싫어고 나와 개버서나도 싫어 야셔 버지 아지 这里就用多少少去，俺那你们用多充不来，人就是没说的这些嘢，但写了啥的，那啥眼看上这下面都是写了，这把这他说他全部用啊是那啥的，写个这样来啊，当不就说是一个得罪，这说是一个我不了，打档的是那什么东档。那是国联当的，俺是国当我都说嘛，俺是就国联当什么当的，不是当不的没吧，敲着的没吧，但的这加解释，敲用的什么当啊，当然先给加解话，的开始不都是这里全部里面呢，那这些呢这些了我拿来给下去，我多看不了，是那些有。
That's all. Sometimes some of the people who come to meet me say that they don't have much wisdom or clear seeing intelligence. So the word being translated as wisdom or clear seeing intelligence here is sherap in Tibetan, or in Sanskrit, prajna. So some of the people who come to see me say, I don't have a lot of prajna. I don't have a lot of this clear seeing wisdom. So please give me a blessing so that I can develop more prajna. Or please open the gateways of my wisdom. But prajna is not really like that. It's not something that I can open up for people right away or transfer to them by some means. And there's actually a lot of different explanations about what prajna, or a clear-seeing intelligence, is from a Buddhist perspective. There's many classifications of prajna. But if we were to describe what prajna means succinctly, we could say that prajna is the wisdom that realizes the true nature of reality. So this quality of prajna is developed at the stage of training in the view. So in order to develop prajna, we need to develop an unmistaken view of what the true nature of things is. And developing this involves engaging, again, in a lot of our own personal reflection and changing the habits of the way that we think and understand things so that we can move from a very narrow way of thinking about things and a narrow way of understanding things to making our manner of thinking and our perspective of our mind more and more broad, more and more vast. So we're moving from habits of narrowness and stuffiness, so to speak, to more habits of vastness, precision, and openness. So this is the main focus at the stage of ground, from among the triad of ground, path, and fruition. Developing this clear-seeing wisdom that sees things in a vast way, that sees things from the perspective of the total picture, the panoramic picture of reality. Obviously, then, this type of wisdom or prajna is something that can't simply be given to someone immediately, but needs to develop within each individual. And this involves working with our habits of the way we usually see things, the way we usually think, and the way that we usually understand things. Moving from habits of narrowness and bias to habits of openness, freedom from bias, and clearly seeing things as they are.
Then you understand the Tawasadi is not means like you need to learn lots of complicated philosophical school or viewpoint somewhere. That the day chigo mayimba. That kashi philosophical school the viewpoint is mambulojon chengen is ya we need to toilet kojugi ji samle jacher chimba ji ko kajo ji loye chir chimba da ji ngona zne tinje yinbe nyeba mindo samzum ji dawa ji le xian qian xian ba de ji de ju san ko buzu do zha ji ma da be an da ge shu ko ngona zne ji we need to toilet ji 지 근세나 삼 동계야로다 다는 신기 로게 셔르다르지 진짜지 용병 해봐요 진주스 급딜래야 아주 사디 가주에다 수디 아주지 가주에다 지 초용네 지 초래와 뭐 초용네 삼동아 근세 삼동 니지 또 초용네 삼동아지 다 and dancing narrow mind my did quality Keshim started something.
Therefore, training in the view is not just about learning the tenets of various philosophical systems. Sometimes training in view does involve learning about different philosophical views, but the main purpose of training in view is, as was just explained, making our perspective more vast, making our minds more open and clear. Some people take a mistaken approach to training in the view, and instead of using it as a tool to make their minds more open and clear, they become more and more attached to specific philosophical interpretations. And therefore, instead of allowing their minds to become more open and enlightened, their minds become more and more shut down and stuffy. And so, it's not necessarily a guarantee that engaging in philosophical studies will necessarily lead us to developing a more open and clear mind. Sometimes if we don't engage in study properly, it can lead us to having a more narrow outlook. So the main point with regard to our approach to the view is that it should always be something that we approach with an attitude of open-mindedness, with a willingness to investigate things from all sides, not just one side, and with a willingness to reflect upon the reasons for any given conclusion. This is very important to keep in mind when we study the view.
Another Buddhist principle viewpoint the emptiness
Lasa?
that dear emptiness church in Lejakel Shunia. Lago Shunia Talaware. That church in the Shunia Labdusane, Namgu, Yalia, Zerolia, Shunia Sur. The Chezang Azudi, Tawa Nimba, Comba Nimba, Digi Digi, Azuji Tawa Tubu, you have Digba, Dripche, Nisulia, Tonga, Giganchi. Today, we dig some of the zero cheche, Ma Kashurachi. Back to the ground somewhere. That the new Chigi Chikashua by Tongsan of Cheche. The digital toilet and Shineji, fresh thoughts and Rado. Yamana Chikashua, Shirib Sava, Namju Savaji, Aj, Tepsicha. The dicha de Poya, Miseji, the Chadi, do something.
Lasa? In relation to the term selflessness, there's also a related Buddhist term and principle called emptiness that is very important in relation to the view. In Sanskrit, the word for emptiness is shunyata. But also in Sanskrit, the main part of that word, shunya, means zero. So what are we doing when we study the view of emptiness? We are letting go of our old views and assumptions. We are letting go of our old habits cultivated in our minds.
Start from zero.
We are clearing away all of the dense thoughts and assumptions that we previously had and starting from zero. We bring our mind back to its basic original starting point or starting ground through our reflections of emptiness, and this enables us to see the world freshly. This enables us to allow new wisdom to take birth inside of us. It allows for a space in which a new intelligence can arise. So I think that emptiness is very special in this way. It has this special attribute.
다들 단단한 지식을 내려서야돼. 넘게 벌써 경우에 심부처하게 Buddhist science 주송하디 그래서 대임이라. 들이 조조되듯이 직근세 삼당. 여기 니수당. 여기 초아 가림바. 되게 량아 저기 배 남주가 로게로 깨지. 들이 지금 토안다. 조조디 다지 출루기 가서 다지 이제 다 가서 다지 not religious somewhere did 되게 custom 다 데다 다나 신기지 ritual 데다 잡아 매야지 조조디 안다르지 균세 안다 섬도 알지 되지 임바다 다 버지 드린 시시 지다 두주의 당기네 조사서 제가 드린 디스 고주가데 치우인상 안데지 두주의 계시야데 디스 두주의 망즈르지 당브레 다 드린 샤베 드리지 임바다
That's Since this is the approach that we take at the stage of ground, developing an authentic relationship with reality as it is, I think this highlights the essential meaning of what His Holiness the Dalai Lama refers to when he speaks about Buddhism as being similar to a science or as a science of mind. The emphasis is on finding out the reasons for any given conclusion, investigating what the actual state of things is in our own direct experience and through our own intelligence and investigation. Therefore, the process of training in the view in this way is not really religious per se. It's not about adopting a religious way of being. It's not really about adopting customs or following certain rituals. But rather, the main principle is that we find out the true reasons why we believe in any particular conclusion. And we continually work on developing our own intelligence so that we can have deep confidence in our own relationship with reality. So I think this brings us to a good time at which we can conclude this morning's session. Our time has been a little bit limited by our events of the day, but this is simply the first teaching session, and we will reconvene in the afternoon.